be an English teacher. And that is actually really, really cool. You wouldn't think so, but it is such a cool course because there's so many things that you didn't really think of. You know, when I know we've got some teachers here, there are certain things that you do as a teacher, you just sort of do, it's instinctive. But there actually is a reason behind it. And we're sort of looking at the theory behind why teachers do the sort of things that they do. So I'm going to get right to it. I'm just going to turn my camera off for now to save bandwidth. And no idea if it's off or not, but anyway. We're going to start with Learning Unit 1. So this is essentially your introduction. It's diversity, teaching approaches, and terminology. Now, the terminology is not a separate section in and of itself because you will pick up the terminology as you go along. What we're going to start with is diversity. So I'm going to ask you guys just quickly, what do you guys think of when you think diversity? You can unmute and yell out as well. Can everyone see the screen? The one that says Learning Unit 1. Differences, yes, absolutely. A whole range of things, yes. Culture, race, learning styles, etc. Definitely. Culture, communities, absolutely. South Africa's many cultures, fantastic. Perspectives, lovely. The differences that all learners, teachers, and people have inherently, fantastic. So I can see you guys have a very good grasp on what diversity is. Now, we are in some ways really lucky because we're very used to the idea of diversity because South Africa is an incredibly diverse culture. Different language groups, yes, absolutely. Not just race or culture, but linguistic, religious, socioeconomic, gender, and age. Fantastic. So I hope you guys are making notes of all of these things. If you don't have a notepad and paper, or if you don't have something where you're taking notes, I strongly suggest you please get some so that you can make these notes as we go along. Disabilities, yes. Healthcare is also diverse. Now that's a really good point because access to any sort of facility is very diverse in South Africa. So I think you've covered pretty much, well, we haven't covered all of them because there is an incredible number of diversities that you will find in any group, especially in South Africa. But we've covered a lot of the main ones. So race, for example, is not generally as important as culture is. Learning styles are very important because there is a huge diversity of learning styles that you're going to come across in your classroom. And we're going to touch on that when it comes to multimodality and different teaching styles. One thing I want to point out is that all learners, teachers, and people have inherent differences. Now, this also throws a bit of a wrench in the works because we can't stereotype. So we can't say because you belong to this group, I'm expecting you to behave this way, because everyone in that group is an individual. And it's also very important to acknowledge our diversity from some of our learners, because we also come from a place where we have been molded by our race, by our culture, by our communities, our gender, our learning styles. So all of that is going to have an impact on the way in which we teach. Socioeconomic, gender and age are also really, really important examples of diversity, and those are going to make a big difference in your classroom. Now, one of the big things about linguistic ability is that is what is really going to be probably your biggest challenge when it comes to diversity in the classroom is linguistic ability. Now, to make it even more challenging, you don't just have students who are good at English and students who are bad at English and students who fall somewhere in the middle. You're going to have students who are inherently just good at languages and they just sort of pick up English. You're going to have students who inherently struggle with English and they struggle with languages in general. I really hope that that is not an echo that's going to start. So then, that is not the only type of differences in linguistic ability. You are going to have learners who are second, sometimes even third language speakers in your class, and they're studying English as a first language. So you're going to find a diversity of people within this range as well. Some people speak English as their second language and they speak it beautifully because they're exposed to it a lot. Some students speak English as their second language, but they're only ever exposed to it at school. Now, this is where it becomes a little bit more complicated because their linguistic ability is not an actual reflection of their academic ability. What's happening here is we are finding ourselves with a language barrier. Also, as you say, we have disabilities, we have neurodiversities. That's going to be a fun one in your class. And remember, neurodiversities belong on a spectrum. There are some theories that say if properly tested, nearly everyone would fall somewhere on some spectrum. But you're going to have some learners who are bouncing out of their seats, some learners who hate talking, who hate being the center of attention. You're going to have learners who have genuine anxiety, and you're going to have to deal with that when it comes to orals or prepared speaking. Then we also have access to resources. So some people are going to have access to all the resources in the world. They're going to have internet at home. They're going to have access to libraries. They're going to have access to tutors. Then we have some students who only have access to the resources that you provide for them. Now, to get to the core of it, you are never going to be able to accommodate all these diversities. That's the reality. They don't put it in the book, but the reality is you're never going to be able to accommodate all of these diversities. If you try and accommodate all diversities in one lesson, that lesson is going to be the ultimate flop. So if we can't accommodate all diversities, why do we bother learning about them? That's the crux of the matter. So I'm going to throw this over to you. We have so many diversities within a classroom, and yet we've got between 20 and 40 kids that we've all got to teach the same lesson to. And we can't accommodate all of them. So why do we bother learning about diversity? What are your thoughts on the matter? Good, good. Now, follow those thoughts to the end. so that we are aware of it and we are sensitive to the learners. Awareness. What does that awareness do? Why should we be aware of it? Good, to accommodate one specific learner if help is needed, or to understand their community. So if a child asks for help, sorry, I'm going a bit fast here. So if a child asks for help, you understand his or her challenges. It's better to accommodate some than none. Helps us understand our learners better. It is important to know and try understand diversities to be able to understand learners as people and how they behave and learn within their frame of reason. Beautifully written answer. To be all-inclusive towards students to get their best outcome. To try and accommodate or create lessons that help more than the minority. To have an idea and be able to accommodate as many learners as we can, so that we can help where needed to bridge the gap. To have an understanding of our students' ability to bridge the gap for them to be included. To be able to adapt teaching strategies to include the majority of the class. Excellent. You guys have such a good grasp on this. So yes, pretty much what you all have said. So that we are aware. Why do we need to be aware? Because there might be a learner in your class that has very specific needs. The more you are aware of these needs, the more you are able to accommodate that learner. So for example, that learner that has genuine anxiety, and I'm talking about genuine anxiety, not, I don't feel like doing my oral today. And it is kind of difficult to tell them apart, but what accommodations can you make for that child that genuinely struggles to speak in public? For example, once you understand that child's unique situation, for example, the accommodations I made were things like, I'm not going to call on you. I'm going to wait until you are ready to do your oral. And if the learner starts the oral and then stumbles and then gets all flustered, I can say, okay, stop, take a deep breath, let's start again. So sometimes you need to be able to accommodate that one child. And yes, it is better to accommodate some than none. So what we are looking for here is that we are looking to be as inclusive as we can be. Now, as I say, we can't include everyone in every lesson, and please do not even try. It's never going to work. But the more aware we are of the diversities in general and the diversities within our class, the more we are able to accommodate as many learners as possible. And so that we can help where we are needed to bridge that gap. That is a fantastic reason as well. It's linked to helping that one student. If we have an understanding of where a learner's difficulties are coming from, we can help them far more effectively. So the way you're going to help a learner who's struggling with English just because they really are not a language person and they struggle to read and comprehend is going to be slightly different to the way you help a student who is actually very intelligent but is working with a language barrier. So yes, great answer here. You might, for example, have a child who doesn't contribute at all, and it might be just because of the language block. You might come to the stage when you have to tutor that person one-on-one. So things like that. If you are picking on learners to speak, sometimes some people might not want to speak because they're self-conscious about their language. So you have to be aware of that. And yes, we've got another example of how we can accommodate anxiety, do their public speaking at lunch or after school, so that, you know, it's going to depend on your school's rules about this, but there are always some accommodations you can make. So could we maybe include or upskill our teachers to be multilingual? That would be first prize. It really would be a truly fantastic thing to be able to do that. The reality is teachers are very pressed for time all the time. So we are unlikely to get to that place very soon. I know now they are starting to include another language in PGCE courses and in BEd courses, so that at least there is a basic knowledge of other languages, which is fantastic. Okay, I'm going to pause at this point and ask, does anyone have any specific questions? Okay. So this is a really important idea. The idea between equality and equity. So just from the image, oh yes, sorry, I will remind me to put my email address up at the end of the session. And the pacer should be up.
I'm really sorry to ask this so late, but I just wanted to ask, will we be working in groups or partners this semester?
It's possible I might put you into groups for some activities, but that is not going to be the main focus. So all of your assignments, for example, and the ICE tasks are going to be individual. It just might be in a lecture, I might put you into groups for 5 minutes. So I will put up the pacer. It should have been up, but I see that they've duplicated my course on ARC, so I'm not entirely sure what's still up and what has been taken down, but all of that will be available. Okay, so back to equity and equality. What is the difference? This isn't a trick question, by the way. I know it might seem like very obvious, but it's not. Equality is where everyone gets the same. Equity is where everyone gets what they need. Exactly. Equity is about the chance to have an equal outcome. Beautifully put. Equity, same for all. Equality, fair treatment. Brilliant. Brings to mind everyone is genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is stupid. Yes. So equality means treating everyone equal. Fantastic. So I hope you guys have also taken note of that. Now, what we have to understand is that treating everyone equally does not mean we are treating everyone fairly. Equity is based on the person you are, what you need personally, and equality is being treated the same. Yes, very good way to put it. So what we aim for is not necessarily equality. What we are looking for is equity. So as you can see, if you give everyone the same amount of help, one person gets a huge advantage, one person gets what they need, and one person is no better than they were before. If you give each person different amounts of help, then everyone can get the same result. Now, this is a bit of a challenge in the classroom because realistically, there are certain rules. There has to be some level of equality. Now, that is because you've got, for example, 30 children. You can't provide every single one of them with individualized treatment. It's not going to work. However, the more you understand about diversity, the more you understand about the individual struggles or the individual situations of the different learners, the more you are able to provide them with targeted help. So that's what it all comes down to, is the more we are aware of diversity, the more we are able to provide that sort of targeted help to try and bring equity instead of just equality. Okay, so at this point, do you have any questions on equality? Yes, that is an excellent point. Teachers must also practice equanimity, which is calmness and composure, especially in a difficult situation. That is going to be your biggest tool. The best help that you can get for yourself is to be calm and composed no matter what happens. You can have a tantrum later, you can fall apart later, but in the moment, the more calm and composed you are, the more likely you are to have a positive outcome. Okay, so any questions on diversity, equity, equality? Okay, so these are questions I want you to think about. You don't have to write the answers down. You don't have to answer now, but I really want you to think about them because these are the sort of thinking about these sort of things is the sort of thought pattern that's going to help you a lot in your assignments. So one of the first things you want to look at is what are the advantages of diversity in a classroom? Because we've spoken a lot about the difficulties, but I want you to think about what are some of the advantages. And then I want you to think about how you personally, as a teacher, can deal with diversity in your classroom. Obviously, not every single diversity, but how are you going to deal with diversity in general? And this is a cat who does not hate you because of your ethnicity, your sexuality, your gender, your appearance, or your religion. He hates you because he is a cat. Now, that is someone who treats everyone equally. Okay, so the language skills. Now, this is one of my favorite things because there are 4 pairs of language skills. Listening and speaking, reading and viewing, writing and presenting, structures and conventions. So there we go. Let's give this A, so everyone can edit it. Okay. Oops. What happened? Sorry. Let me try that again. This is where I want you guys to type. So the first set we said was listening and speaking. The second set was reading and viewing. The third set, writing and presenting. And then structures and conventions. Right, now what I want you guys to do is I want you to write whatever comes to mind when you look at all of those. So when you look at listening and speaking, what comes to mind? What do you understand about it? How would you teach it? How would you assess it? And guys, this really is just a brain dump. It's whatever comes to your mind. So at the bottom, there's a little bar at the bottom with a T. That's for text box. Okay, I'll give you 1 more minute. Okay, so let's see what we've got here. So, oops. How do I get to that side? Okay, so for listening and speaking, the ability to communicate effectively both by learning, taking in information, and speaking, relaying information. Excellent. Expression, very good. Solve problems, comprehension, fluency, yes, good. Clear instructions, conversations. Okay. Nope. Sorry, I'm still getting used to this as well. So, reading and viewing, engaging with peers, world perspective, analysis, making connections, comprehension and interpretation, ability to understand and interpret information, both written and visual. Excellent. Oh, there we go. Yay. Okay. Writing and presenting, grammar, whatever being presented for class should be structured in such a way that is engaging. Yes, good. Imagination, expression and clarity, conveying your understanding and personal beliefs. Nice. Choice of vocabulary, good. Writing as a process approach, nice. Encouraging students to express their thoughts or doubts about certain learning content so as to clarify their understanding, nice. Okay. How it is? Not sure, but I really commend your writing. Tenses, concord, etc. Grammar, rules that are necessary to be understood clearly in all aspects of English. Understanding, paragraph construction, teaching in context. Learners need to learn the processes and strategies aimed at the presentation of their writing. I'm going to move that one over there. Okay. Excellent job, everyone. So, why I say that knowing about these skills is so important is because everything we do, everything that we teach, everything that we assess, all the exams, we are not teaching, for example, a comprehension. We are not teaching a poem. We're not teaching a cartoon. We're not teaching an advert. We're not teaching Shakespeare. What we are teaching are these skills. And we are teaching and assessing the learners in their ability to showcase and display these skills. So some of it's really obvious. For example, listening and speaking. The speaking part, we teach and assess orals. But there's so much more to listening and speaking because students are going to have to learn how to listen. It's an active skill that they're going to have to learn about. They're going to have to learn how to speak clearly, how to communicate their thoughts through clear expression. And that, once again, is a skill. All of these are skills, which means that they can be taught, they can be practiced, they can be improved upon. With reading and viewing, what we are assessing here is, can they read a text? And you really want to give them a variety of texts. So anything from a poem to a book to an opinion piece, to a newspaper article, to a blog post? Can they read a text and can they interpret that text? Then when we talk about writing and presenting is what we mean by that is that we want them to structure their ideas. So whether they are speaking, whether they are writing, whether they are doing a visual representation, can they format and structure their ideas so it makes the most sense? Writing is the entire process from your initial idea all the way through to your final completed piece. So with writing is closely linked to presenting, although all the others are also linked to presenting. What we are looking for is whether it is a short answer to a question on a test, whether it's a paragraph, whether it's a blog article where we've asked them to write, a literature essay, a creative essay. What we are testing is, can they move through the process of brainstorming, then choosing their ideas, then putting their ideas into a logical order, then expanding on those ideas and linking those ideas together, and then presenting a final polished piece. So that's what we are teaching when we teach writing. So we're not just teaching them, we're not just giving them a creative writing topic and say, go forth and do. We're actually teaching them how to structure, how to present, and how to move through that entire process. Structures and conventions. Now, some of you love English grammar. Some of you have a bit of a horror of it. But it's actually really, really important because structures and conventions are closely linked to presenting in that this is what will bring your entire piece of writing or your entire speech together. This is what will help you with your comprehension of reading. Just moving a comma can change the entire meaning of a sentence. So if you were to get the words, a woman without her man is nothing, with no punctuation, it doesn't really mean anything. If you add a capital letter, a woman, comma, without her man, comma, is nothing, then that clearly means that if you take away a woman's man, she's really worth nothing. If you, however, say a woman, exclamation mark, without her, comma, man is nothing, now there's an entirely different viewpoint. Okay, sorry. I find that my learners are always happy with their draft essays and are very unwilling to look at their work critically. They get an idea and want it to remain like that. So the first draft and the final draft looked exactly the same. I've been in publishing my whole life, so I'm accustomed to many revisions before the final. I've always wondered how one can change the single-mindedness of learners. Yes. Now you've really hit a very important point about teaching. No, the slides aren't back up yet. This is all fantastic. What I teach you will hopefully make a lot of sense. But what we teach and what actually goes on in a classroom is going to be different, because this is theory, and teaching is dealing with a whole number of individual people all at once. So in reality, your learners don't really care that much about the theory. They're going to behave the way they're going to behave. So it is a good idea to just bear in mind, and it shouldn't come out in any of your essays, it shouldn't come out in any of your assignments or anything like that. So please don't think this is part of the course. This is just the reality of teaching, is that bear in mind, this is the ideal case. The reality is you're just going to have to try and get as close to the ideal case as possible. So one of the ways you can try and get them to move from just this draft is the final. A lot of it is reluctance to do extra work. Now that they've written it, they actually just want it to be done with. Some of it is they genuinely don't believe that there is anything to do. One way around this is, of course, peer reviews, where you give it to a peer and the peer has to make revisions. So with that, once again, you're also going to have some rules, like there have to be a minimum of 5 changes that you think they should make, or else all that happens is they read it and they say, this is fantastic. And now you're wondering about 2 people's ability to read and write. So that is one way. And then they have to staple their draft to their final, and you can make it a class rule that you have to see at least 7 changes between the draft and the final. So it's a bit of out-the-box thinking that'll help you with that. Those are the main ones that I've used and I've found to be fairly effective. So yeah, I don't know if any of the rest of you have any ideas of how to get around that problem. Okay, well, I'll leave you guys to think about it. So some of the things I want you to consider and to ask yourself, the relationship between reading, writing, and the self. So essentially, how does reading and writing affect ourselves? How does it affect us as individuals? I want you to consider, why is it important to be competent as a writer, as a speaker, as a reader, as a viewer, and as a presenter? So I'm sorry, I don't know if I mentioned, viewing is anything that is visual. So any visual tasks, any visual prompts, are they able to decipher it? Are they able to decode something visual? Then I want you to think about the importance of different approaches to teaching these skills. What I mean here, and we're going to go on to that in the next session probably, is there are different ways to teach. Why do we need to teach these skills in a variety of different ways? What is the point of that? And then why do we focus so much on reading and writing skills? And then finally, I want you to consider the impact of diversity on teaching and learning language skills. So once again, some questions. What is the importance of teaching and learning listening and speaking skills? How will you approach it in a diverse classroom? What are some of the difficulties educators face when developing reading skills in modern learners? How would you overcome these difficulties? What are the benefits of developing reading skills in learners? For writing and presenting, the things I want you to consider: why is it important to focus on writing and presenting? What do you believe are the greatest challenges to teaching writing in a diverse classroom? How do you believe you can overcome these difficulties? And then for structures and conventions, I want you to consider: explain the importance of teaching structures and conventions in the FET classroom, and discuss methods that you believe will be effective for teaching structures and conventions in the FET classroom. So those are all things I want you to consider. Now, I'm going to ask you the first question. This is for you guys to answer. What are the advantages and the disadvantages of having a diverse class? So you know you're going to have a diverse class. Can you think of any advantages to it? And can you think of any disadvantages to it? Okay, academically stronger students can help weaker students in group work. Nice. A diverse classroom fosters a rich learning environment by exposing students to different perspectives, cultures, and experiences. That's an excellent point, that by opening up and acknowledging diversity and embracing diversity, you can actually provide a really rich learning experience. The disadvantage: learning styles. Yes, and we're going to get onto that, I think, in the next section or the section after that. We're going to be touching on all the different learning styles. Different types of personality coming through in the writing. So yes, that's an advantage, that you get different types of personality, you get a variety. And the nice thing is you can share that variety with the class. So some students are going to really love writing nonfiction essays. Some students are going to really love writing creative essays. So you can really take advantage of that. And many perspectives to draw on, absolutely. Advantages include different viewpoints and new ways of learning. Yes. So it's all about, so many of these advantages are about sharing and about embracing the fact that people are different and seeing it as something good. Disadvantages may be that it's difficult for the teacher to standardize the class with each learner having their own level of experience. Yes, that is one of the huge problems with teaching and teaching diverse classes, is that how do we standardize it? Advantage: ability for students to learn from one another. Yes. Linguistic awareness. Absolutely. It teaches real world skills for the students as they are exposed to people not like them. Develops empathy, tolerance, and security. Yes. Wonderful point. Is that it's not just about the classroom. Advantages would include there being multiple perspectives. Disadvantages is that there being multiple learning styles that need to be taken into consideration, and possibly not being able to reach 100% of the class. Yes, that is one of the greatest difficulties, is that there's a high likelihood you're not going to be able to reach 100% of the class, which is why I'll give you the answers to one of the other questions, why we need to teach the various skills in different ways. We need to do that to ensure that even if a student doesn't get it one way, hopefully they'll be able to get it in another way. Advantages: learning from individuals with different perspectives and understanding which feeds collaboration, conversation, out the box thinking. Absolutely. Disadvantages: clash of opinions leading to conflict. Yes. So that is, if we can say, the darker side of that. We hope that what we are doing is we are getting the learners to help each other, so stronger learners helping weaker learners, getting them to share their different opinions, share their different viewpoints, which leads to problem solving, out the box thinking. However, we also know, human nature being what it is, that when people are different, it does lead to conflicts. So you're going to have to, as a teacher, try and balance that out and manage that very carefully. Allows individuals to develop empathy. Yes, exactly. If one uses the communicative approach, people could lose their inhibitions because they just want to debate along because they disagree with each other. And that is a fantastic way of getting them to engage. It probably shouldn't be, but the more they disagree with each other, the more likely they are to come out of their shells and voice their opinions. So that's a definite advantage. Okay, serious, yes. Disadvantages could also be more serious, like bullying or harassment. So that is something you need to keep a careful eye out, that the children who are quote unquote different are not being bullied and harassed, that hopefully we can get our learners to see differences as a good thing instead of something that they want to pick on. Yes, too much diversity results in a lack of cohesion. Yes, so back to the point that there's going to be disconnect between some of the learners, there's going to be conflict, so there's going to be that lack of cohesion. Yes, if you've got students who misbehave, that makes it very difficult for you as a teacher. Different perspectives and background can lead to misunderstandings and conflicts. Definitely. Very good point. Sometimes the teaching body is not diverse, and therefore, when trying to manage and lead a diverse student body, there can be favoritism, students who slip through the cracks, majority rule. Very good point. Excellent point, that if the teaching body does not reflect the diversity, all of those, the favoritism, students slipping through the cracks, majority rule, can become a very real danger. Academic goals cannot always be met in a system that values achievement. Yes, that is so true, because each learner has their own academic goals and achievements. So 48% for one learner can be as rewarding and as hard fought for as 98% for another learner. And then learners may disagree what is appropriate to learn, i.e. religion and evolution. Yes. Now, that is, thank goodness, not as much of a problem in South Africa as it is in, say, America. But one of the things you are going to have to expect is different reactions to different literature. So you are going to have points where some learners might feel quite offended by what is in the literature and might have much stronger reactions to what you're teaching than you would expect. Okay, so you guys have done fantastically well today. I really think you guys have participated so well. Your ideas have been fantastic. So I'm really proud of you. I think that you guys have done very well. Ah, yes, matrics are not happy with Dorian Gray. I have a feeling that might be more to do with the language than the actual message, but I could be wrong. I know my matrics were not very happy with Dorian Gray either. Yeah, so did I, but unfortunately, can bring a horse to water, but you can't always force it to drink. Okay, so yes, that is my email address, alalawet@iie.ac.za. So if you have any questions, any concerns, any queries, please just pop me an email. Guys, please give me 24 hours to respond. I'm not online every minute of the day, so I might need that just that bit of time to catch up. Okay, so thank you all very much for joining. It's been great. I've really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to taking you through the rest of the course. If you have any questions or concerns, please just hang around and feel free to ask.